Hey, welcome back to the stash.
There was some war going on at this time, either Korea or Vietnam, I can't remember, but everybody was against the war. So I thought, I'm going to get a guy who makes munitions, and I'll make him a real industrialist. It's something the kids would hate, I made up a guy named Iron Man, who was sort of like Howard Hughes. He was an inventor, an industrialist. He made munitions, all the things the kids hate. But I said, I'm going to make the kids like him. And apparently they did. Iron Man was a very successful strip, and they're making a movie of him now.
There's something funny about me being a fan of Iron Man, because even though I talk about Spider-Man constantly, even though I adore Daredevil, and even though I've recently started branching out with my videos, Iron Man was always there in the background for me. Sure, I loved the movies growing up. I mean, who didn't during the peak of the MCU? And the first Iron Man film is still one of my favorites Marvel has ever produced. But when I started reading through the Silver Age classics, Tales of Suspense quickly rose to become one of my favorite titles of the era. Sure, there was the Amazing Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and even Nick Fury Doctor Strange era of Strange Tales. But Tales of Suspense with Iron Man, and especially with Captain America as the series progressed, was also a fun read. He was easily one of the heroes who made me love the Silver Age of Marvel Comics, and I don't think many people realize this. Iron Man's earliest comics, the ones buried in Tales of Suspense, are some of the most creative, most charming, and most brilliant stories Marvel ever made for the time. They're weird, they're colourful, they're Cold War as hell, but behind all the rough edges is this spark, this sense of boundless imagination that so many other titles had at the time. And I've always loved that. Sadly, these stories aren't talked about much anymore. People remember the red and gold armor, the movies, the modern reinventions, but the original run, those Tales of Suspense issues, they hold a very different kind of magic. A type of magic Marvel only had in the 60s. And that's why today, we're going through the first 20 issues of Iron Man's history, from his very first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 39, to the moment Captain America joins the title in Tales of Suspense issue 59. This is the era where Tony Stark becomes Iron Man. But hey, real quick, here at the stash, we're swinging for 25,000 subscribers. Now that's a tall order, I know, but with great power comes great responsibility. And all you gotta do is click subscribe. So if you're into Iron Man or just comic book deep dives, feel free to stick around. Also, be sure to stay to the very end for another episode of Comics from the Stash. This time, I'll be going over some of my early Tales of Suspense Iron Man comics from my very own comic collection. But with that all said, let's get right back into the video. Oh man, there's something so sacred about reading the very first appearance of a Marvel character, and Iron Man's debut in Tales of Suspense issue 39 is unlike any other. The origin is one of the most grounded origins Marvel ever produced for the Silver Age. There's no radioactive spider like Spider-Man, no cosmic rays like the Fantastic Four, rather Iron Man comes from something terrifyingly real, the brutality of war. Tony Stark is captured, forced to build weapons, critically injured, and with only one option left, he builds a suit of armor to keep himself alive. The origin is dark and fundamentally tragic, and yet there's this spark in the art. John Heck capturing Tony rising from the shadows, the bulky grey armor looking less like a superhero and more like a prison. It's haunting but inspiring. That's the brilliance of Tales of Suspense issue 39. It gives us a hero born from survival. And from the very first issue, Iron Man is already different from every hero Marvel had created up to that point. He's a man, one whose heart can literally stop at any moment. There's vulnerability in these pages, a sense that Iron Man is both powerful and fragile at the same time, and that fragility never goes away. This is what makes reading these comics feel so emotionally charged. Tony Stark is this brilliant genius, an inventor, but at his core, he's a survivor. And this simple idea that a hero can be powerful yet always at risk becomes the emotional backbone of Iron Man's character for years on end. After his debut, Iron Man's early stories take a sharp creative turn. This is where the Silver Age charm really kicks in. Tales of Suspense issue 40 introduces the gold armor. Well, it's the same as before, but with a different coat of paint. What I appreciate though is how there was a real reason behind the change. This was Tony's first real attempt at becoming more than a walking iron tank. The shift from grey to gold is symbolic. It's Tony refining the idea of Iron Man in an attempt to become a hero of the people. But what I love most about these middle issues isn't the armor, it's the tone. These stories are wildly unique. Every issue feels like Stan Lee, Berns, Jack Kirby, and Don Heck are trying something different. Alien invaders one month, mystical creatures the next, Cold War espionage right after that. It's chaotic, yes, but it is fun. The storytelling has this youthful energy to it. You can feel Marvel testing everything. Because in the early 60s, there were no rules. Well, within the bounds of the Comics Code Authority, of course, but nonetheless, what made this era magical wasn't the polish of it, it was the imagination. And Iron Man was one of the best vessels for that creativity. Because Tony Stark is a character defined by innovation, so every issue simply becomes a playground for new ideas. One thing I love about the early Tales of Suspense issues is how quickly it expands Iron Man's universe. Issue 45 introduces Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts, two characters who become essential to Tony's story, and their dynamic is instantly impactful. Happy is rough-edged but loyal, Pepper is sharp, witty, and the typical 60s love interest, and Tony, trapped between his armored life and his public persona, struggles to let anyone in. It's a classic Silver Age Marvel triangle, but it works. And then issue 46 hits, the first appearance of the Crimson Dynamo. This is one of the most earliest appearances where Iron Man gets a villain who actually matches his identity. The Crimson Dynamo is a technological rival, a reflection of Tony's genius turned against him. These issues show something important, that Iron Man is at his best when the story embraces technology, Cold War tension, and emotional stakes. It's also where the charm of the era becomes undeniable. The Cold War themes feel exaggerated by today's standard, sure, but behind the propaganda is a genuine fear that science can be weaponized. And Iron Man embodies that fear more than any other character. You see, where I found the trope to be a little tiresome within the pages of Incredible Hulk and sometimes even Journey in a Mystery, it just works so naturally here. And I think a lot of that comes down to Iron Man himself. Tony Stark is both the creator of the world's most advanced weapons and his protector from those same weapons. That tension gives these early issues their emotional weight. By this point, Iron Man's world feels established, and these next issues are where Marvel really leans into bigger ideas. Tales of Suspense issue 47 brings us the Melter, and while he isn't the greatest villain, I do appreciate what he can actually represent. He's a villain that challenges Tony's technology directly, which is a pattern that majority of Iron Man's rogues gallery later follows. Soon after the epic battle against the Melter, Tony Stark finally upgrades his suit to the classic one we all know and love. Steve Ditko nailed it with the design, I love it. This just screams Iron Man to me. I remember getting up to this issue just felt like a big deal purely for that. But then we reached something monumental. Tales of Suspense issue 50, the first appearance of the Mandarin. The Mandarin, besides maybe Crimson Dynamo, is Iron Man's first proper nemesis. He pushes him in every way possible, and each encounter they have, even during the 60s, is iconic. From his rings, his martial prowess, his empire, ideology, it's all massively ambitious for a single issue of a still developing character. This is the big one. This is the one I was super excited to read way back when, because you just know it's such a big deal from the cover alone. I had only really known the Mandarin from Marvel Ultimate Alliance or the Marvel cards from the 90s when I was a kid, but even from that, he's a character that just never left my mind, and this is where the early Tales of Suspense run proves something. Iron Man stories always work best when they simply have stakes, and issue 50 gives Iron Man that very thing, and Tony Stark, as always, rises to meet them. By these later issues, Iron Man feels much more confident. The world around him has taken shape, with reoccurring villains as well as characters like the Black Widow and Hawkeye making their way onto the scene, as well as Tony Stark's character beginning to deepen. And much of the benefit of the comic, the stories become more personal, more emotional, and more about Tony's secrets, his relationship, and his fear of being discovered. And no matter the villain shown, none of them in my opinion overshadow Tony's core struggle. I love the concept that Tony Stark is defined by the burden of being Iron Man. And through it all, that's the emotional brilliance of this run. He hides inside the armor, he depends on it, he's imprisoned by it. And that tragic weight gives these stories their staying power. Even decades later, you can feel the humanity behind the pages. Tales of Suspense issue 59 is a turning point. This is the moment Captain America officially joins the title, and while Iron Man still appears, the book becomes a shared feature like so many other of the Tales series at the time. Strange Tales had the Human Torch and Doctor Strange, which soon became Doctor Strange and Nick Fury. Tales to Astonish had Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Incredible Hulk, which also soon switched to the Hulk and Namor the Submariner, and now finally Tales of Suspense had Iron Man and Captain America. Reading issue 59 feels like closing the final chapter on a creative period defined by its boldness. It's bittersweet, because the run up to this point has been one of Marvel's most imaginative early creative streaks. This is where Iron Man became a character, where Tony Stark became complex, and where Marvel discovered the tone for one of its greatest heroes. And now, that era ends. But in a way, that's perfect, because Iron Man's identity, his emotional foundation, has been built. Issue 59, in a sense, is a graduation. And the best part of it all is, those new stories, the ones shared by Captain America and Iron Man, become some of my favorite comics from the time. I had an absolute blast reading them, and so the way I saw it when I was going through the issues was that I got twice the fun for the same amount of pages. Whenever I go back to these comics, I feel something I rarely feel with modern comics, a sense of fun discovery, because every new panel feels like an idea, every villain feels like an experiment, every issue feels like Marvel asking what if? What if a man needed technology to survive? What if a suit of armor was a prison? What if genius wasn't enough to escape your own creations? What if the Cold War wasn't just a backdrop but the heart of a hero's trauma? And sure, these issues don't always succeed. They're uneven, sometimes silly, sometimes predictable, but they're fun. This era is Marvel at its most honest. Creators working together, trying everything, building mythologies with nothing but imagination and ink. And Iron Man, of all characters, shines brightest when he's surrounded by this kind of creative chaos. That's what makes these early issues so charming and endlessly rereadable. So when you peel back all the Silver Age tropes, when you strip away the goofy science, when you look beyond the villains and the Cold War backdrop, you find something surprisingly deep. Iron Man is the story of a man saving himself. These issues originated from an origin that's all about survival. They're about a man who should be dead, but refuses to stop creating, and that's why I love this era. Not because it's perfect, and not because every story is amazing, but because it captures something pure. It captures that period where Marvel were inventing their own mythology in real time. This is Iron Man in his rawest form, and reading these issues today, you don't just learn about the birth of a hero, you truly feel it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Comics from the Stash. You might notice that this setup is a little different, and that is because I have been so sick recently, and I am not putting that mask on my face while I have such a bad, I'm guessing, nasal infection. You probably could hear it in the video, and if you could, I do apologize for that. So yeah, for today's episode, I am doing it a little bit different, but let's just get right into it. So I don't actually have that many Tales of Suspense issues of Iron Man before Captain America joined the title, so I did add some extra ones just to make up for it. And the first one for today is going to be actually his premiere issue for his very own title. Then after that, I have a comic that Marvel did with Iron Man and Namor the Submariner to basically, I think, get them ready to have their own series. This book does go for quite a bit. It is literally just called Iron Man and Submariner. Then one of, if not my favourite cover of Tales of Suspense, we have issue 59, the issue where Captain America joins the title. So now we're finally into the Tales of Suspense issues that just solely have Iron Man. And we have issue 55. I believe this is the third appearance of the Mandarin, but a very nice cover. Then lastly, it is my earliest Iron Man issue, and it does have the gold armor. It is issue 44 of Tales of Suspense. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do apologize for being sick. It has been rough, and I've been dying to make this video, so I finally got to the point where I could actually record without sounding too bad, but even just now it's gotten worse. But yeah, thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.